Happening now here on Newzroom Afrika Channel 405. Let's take you live to Pretoria, where the Department of Correctional Services is conducting a raid at the Atteridgeville Female Correctional Facility. The operation aimed at curbing illegal activities and ensuring compliance with correctional regulations. And we are joined now by the Correctional Services Commissioner, Makgothi Thobakgale, who is with the team conducting that particular raid. Commissioner, good to have you, and thank you very much for coming on this evening. I suppose this is part of your routine raids, which we have seen you conducting in large parts of the year. What are you particularly looking for at this center?
Well, we are conducting a raid, basically checking and searching for illegal objects that sometimes find their ways into our correctional facilities.
Is this particular facility notorious for having such contraband?
Well, this facility is part of the Hoshimampuru management area. The Hoshimampuru management area has been identified as one of the facilities that we have to focus on because of the type of inmates that we accommodate under this management area. What is peculiar with this correctional facility is that it's a female, inmate correctional facility, and the raid that we're doing today, we're doing it with female security officers. We are, of course, expecting to uncover whatever that is illegal that we find here, and we then proceed to charge those inmates.
In your experience, are the discoveries any different as opposed to what you find in a male correctional service center?
They are not different, but I must indicate that in terms of quantities, in female, correctional facilities, the quantities are very low. When you look at drugs, when you look at cell phones and other objects, sharp objects, in some instances you find that there is none. But every raid has got its own dynamics in terms of what you actually discover. So I can only speak to that conclusively when we do a tally of what we would have found at the end of the raid.
In the previous one, at least the last two, you would have found that in some instances the inmates would have been tipped off and others would have hid away their contraband and other substances that are illegal, not supposed to be having there. How do you ensure that these operations are really kept at a low, at a down low, if you like, and the inmates don't get to know about them?
Well, very few officials that have been vetted work, to prepare for these raids. But also, even if offenders get to know or they get tipped and they try to hide these objects, we always find them. The difficulty is that now you find them in places where you can't link them with a particular offender. So that becomes the difficulty. But objects like cell phones, when we find those, we get to get into those cell phones and we are able to get the details of whom these offenders were communicating with. We can link then the offender to the cell phone and anybody else who has assisted the offender in getting the cell phone in or who has been communicating with the offender.
Yeah. I wanted to come to that. Do these raids, is there direct correlation between the raids conducted and a drop in existence of contraband or contraband being smuggled in?
There is a correlation. In fact, out of the raids, we actually get to uncover patterns of how the contrabands would make it in. One of the things that happens is that once we have cleaned the facility, those that would want to take the contrabands back inside, because this is a it's also a market on its own. For contrabands to get into our facilities, some officials get paid, inmates, exchange monies. Now, after an operation like this, if now they have to start again, the cycle gets to be more expensive. And in some instances, we even get offenders now coming out to say, you cleaned yesterday, this one and that one are trying to bring back this contrabands into the facility, and they are endangering our safety, and at the same time they are interfering with our peace. So the raids actually help. Down the line, the impact is actually getting us to a point where we reduce the influx.
And Commissioner, in terms of consequence management, is there a process in which those who are authorities in charge of facilities are also looked at and held responsible in terms of systems that they put in place? Should a raid of this nature uncover that there is actually more contraband that makes its way in than what should be a norm, I suppose?
We are doing that. We start with the head of center, because after this, we actually do an investigation. Because we want to understand the root, we want to understand the root cause also, and we link the points that show how these contrabands make it in and how they get to be sustained inside our facilities. So we link that to the different levels of management, from obviously from our officials that are doing the bit on the ground, to the unit manager. We link that to the section head, and then we link that to the head of center. We charge them, and where there are specifics for us to be able to open criminal cases, we also do that.
For many South Africans, I know there'll be a whole lot of commotion on social media. Last time there were laptops, there were TVs, cell phones, all sorts of other things that were found. The smartwatches, people were quite amazed at the type of thing that is found in these facilities. But one thing that we never really get to see is what happens to the officials suspected of being involved in these particular activities, except for knowing that there'll be internal disciplinary processes. What ultimately happens to them?
As I have indicated, they get arrested when we open criminal cases. That's exactly what happens to them.
And is that something that you have a record of how many you would have arrested and so on and so forth, or those who would have faced other sanctions?
We have a record of that. We were giving statistics to the portfolio committee this week in Parliament. But you should also realize that we are chasing a moving target. So on a daily basis we get reports. We actually get those that get caught trying to smuggle, and immediately they get reported to the police, and the police intervene immediately, and they open a case, and they get arrested. We have statistics.
Correctional Services Commissioner there, Makgothi Thobakgale, once again with his team taking a proactive stance, combating corruption within the Department of Correctional Services and those facilities there. They are at the Atteridgeville Ladies Correctional Center tonight.